Good afternoon, you wee bastards, and welcome back to some more War Thunder devlog content with Koala. Today, we don't really have much to talk about, just some boring German tank that got announced. It's got a little bit of armour, some crappy German cannon, probably not all that fast, definitely not combat proven in real life. I mean, it's probably going to suck. Maybe it'll get a good matchmaker and that'll make up for all of its various weaknesses. I don't know, but it's coming to top tier. Now, I'm not sure, I don't think I've ever heard of this thing before. I mean, it's really not a big deal at all. The, Leopard 2A4? Yeah, so you German fans, wereaboos, you can finally shut up with all your hate comments on every single other dev blog for this patch. You finally have your Leopard 2. The Leopard 2 serial production variant is here, and it's the Leopard 2A4, the most heavily produced Leopard 2 to date. We have a lot to talk about. This might take a while, and this video is already out a day late, so let's get started, shall we? So the important thing to ask right now is, what variant of the Leopard 2 is this? Well, I mean, I just said it's the Leopard 2A4, but what exactly does that mean to us? We know what the Leopard 2 is. It's easily one of the most famous main battle tanks of all time, with variants of it still being used to this day, including by Germany herself, with the newest models of Leopard 2A6 and 2A7. These are argued to be the best MBTs of our time, in many people's minds beating out the best variants of the Abrams the US has to offer, due to things like weight and economy, off-road ability, stuff like that. But let's not get into that can of worms. Obviously we're not getting the latest variant of the Leopard 2, and it's surprisingly enough not the earlier variant of the late 1970s to early 80s, the Leopard 2A0 to 2A3, which only featured minor incremental changes upon each other, things like infrared and other imaging systems, fire control systems, crew protection systems, communication devices. Predominantly it was the same armour, definitely the same gun, the Rheinmetall L44, that all variants of the Leopard used right up to the 2A6. But the variant we're seeing is the Leopard 2A4. This was the last variant of the German main battle tank to not feature the famous arrowhead turret design, but had substantial armour increases over previous variants. However, specific armour values for this tank are still very much classified, and so estimates are all over the place. Now, it's important to understand the difference between classified and unknown. So, for the M1 Abrams and Challenger 1 and other tanks that currently top War Thunder's meta, the values of the armour may be classified, but all that means is that we're not supposed to know for certain, and nobody's estimates have officially been confirmed. But that doesn't mean that those estimates are wrong. Highly educated people have made exceptionally well-founded estimates of those armour values. We're pretty sure we have them correct to within a few millimeters. Certainly close enough to have a pretty faithful representation of them in-game. This is also true for earlier variants of the Leopard 2, early variants of the T80, the original M1A1, the T72. Yeah, we might not be technically supposed to know, but we're pretty sure we're accurate in our estimates. But tanks like the Leopard 2A4, T80U, M1A1HA, Challenger 2, T90, yeah, this is where our estimates start to become a little broader. The titanium tungsten alloy in the Leopard 2A4 was the most effective armour for a tank at the time of its creation, estimated at 690mm of effective armour against kinetic energy munitions like APFSTS, and a ridiculous 1290mm against chemical warheads like heat and ATGMs. Holy shit. We've broken the 1000mm range. Guys, remember when the mouse was the most armoured thing in game? To put it into perspective, that tank has 240mm or 18.6%, less than a fifth of this tank's protection against heat. A fifth. Yeah, almost 700mm against kinetic and almost 1300 against chemical. Jesus Christ, that is disgusting. Like, ugh. That is terrifying. Now, as I said before, that is only an estimate, which we're pretty sure is slightly over. Estimates range within almost 100mm for kinetic energy effectiveness and are all over the place as far as chemical energy munitions goes. That's also only for the turret. The hull has a little less armour. Just like all modern main battle tanks, this thing is designed to be used most effectively at ranges exceeding 1.5 kilometers and in a hull down position. Now, as for the shells this tank will fire out of its 120mm L44 gun, oh boy. The DM33 shell, which was the main armor-piercing fin-stabilized discarding sable shell used by the Leopard 2A4 of the late 1980s, had roughly almost 590mm of penetration at close range and roughly 550mm at 2 km range. Yeah, like the Type 90 and many other tanks of this era, the Leopard 2A4 would really struggle to fight itself. The tank weighs in at 55 tons and has a 1500 horsepower diesel engine, giving it a power to weight ratio of roughly 27 horsepower per ton and a top speed of 68 km per hour, slower than the Leopard 2K due to the added weight of the armour. The biggest thing about the Leopard 2A4 is the fact that we're starting to see tanks that can't be penetrated by their own guns and the shells they fired. You see, in World War II and earlier generation main battle tanks, the development of the guns easily kept pace with the development of the tanks themselves. Various combat parameters were worked on, of course, but armour was always penetrable by the tank itself, with only a few exceptions. Now, in truly modern tanks, the shells, tandem warheads and the like are matched with new ERA and active protection systems that screw off ATGM's guidance systems. I forget the name of it, but a lot of Russian MBTs have some form of this. The armour isn't just the armour. You've of course got the Tusk equipment on the modern Abrams variants, the various ERA on Russian vehicles. The armour itself is more focused on equipment like that, which stops the first shell. Shells these days, depleted uranium, multi-core shells like 3BM42 Mango, which for those of you who don't know was fired by the T-80 when it came out in I believe the mid to late 80s, the shell that is, and is the world's most heavily exported shell. Well, you know how confused a lot of people were when Update 1.71's new MBTs rolled around and armour, spaced or composite, was visualised in X-ray view rather than in armour view? Well, imagine trying to visualise the effect of multi-core projectiles in the game's current engine. But what I'm trying to say is that this generation of main battle tanks, the Leopard 2, specifically the 2A4, which we're getting, the T-80U, the M1A1HA, the Challenger 2, the Type 90, AMX Leclerc possibly, although I don't really know much about that tank. Speaking of which, Gaijin, where is it? But these are the ones that, even without add-on armour packages like ERA and everything, yeah, these guys couldn't penetrate themselves. In the past, the guns and shells were mated to each other, and that was the focus of new tank development. Make a vehicle that can make use of the best guns and shells it could have access to. The armour was developed for the sake of keeping up. However, here, the development of shells, at least as far as penetrating power is concerned, started to falter. Here, the armour was developed to a pace far higher than the shells were, and if these tanks had faced themselves on the battlefield, frontally, there wouldn't be all that much they could do. Of course, you have the depleted uranium shells used by the Abrams, which have just dumb levels of penetrating power. I mean, whoa, those things are just scary considering how much armour they can penetrate. But for other nations' tanks, the penetration values of their shells are slightly low when you consider just how effective the armour on these variants of their tanks became. Countries didn't start exporting these tanks until they'd already developed something that could beat it, and that would often take them 5 to 10 years to develop a counter to their own armour. Now, of course, the T-80U specifically is most famous for its Contact 5 ERA, and I'm sure that without that, a lot of things could penetrate it, but my point is, these tanks didn't have shells that were able to fight their equal contemporaries. They'd fight against last generation MBTs like T-55s, or export variants without the classified and complex armour that was used by the nation that owned them. A lot of their use was against IFVs, AFVs and other vehicles that weren't top of the line MBTs. My point is, we're going to have to get something that can level the playing field the Type 90 and Leopard 2A4 have brought us to. I'm suspecting M1A1 and maybe even the Challenger 2. You might call me crazy, but everyone said exactly the same thing when I mentioned the Challenger 1 last December, so hold off the disbelief. I'm also suspecting the T-80U. Now, before we knew we were getting the Type 90, I'd have said T-80B would be more our speed. Hell, even 3 days ago I thought we'd be more likely to see the Leopard 2A0 to 2A3 models rather than go straight for this variant. But the T-80U was first produced, I think, the same year as this tank, as was the M1A1. Now, these tanks matched each other in their performance, their role, and what they meant to the nations that developed them, but that doesn't mean that they were able to fight each other in a head-on assault, like all the other tanks we've ever had in War Thunder can. They would have no chance of penetrating each other's armour frontally. Armour, base armour, didn't really develop much further than these tanks, with some exceptions of course. What was developed further, however, was ERA and other add-on protection systems and shell types. As I said, countries only ever exported these tanks when they knew that they could beat them if the need arose, and they didn't give those shells to the tanks themselves, they gave them to later variants, the Leopard 2A5, 2A6, the T90. These tanks didn't need shells that could penetrate each other's armour, because their operators knew that they wouldn't have to face each other. But, of course, that's how things work in War Thunder, so we'll have to see what Gaijin does to allow us to fight each other on an equal basis with main battle tanks such as the Leopard 2A4 and its contemporaries, which I'm sure are coming soon. You might have noticed me mention the T80 variants a lot in this video, and that's because that tank is probably my favourite vehicle of all time, perhaps on par with the Leopard 2A6 with its long-barreled L55 gun. Oh. I definitely prefer the look of the arrowhead turreted Leopard 2s. Some people say that makes the gun look stubby, but that's exactly what I like about the Leopard 2A6. Nonetheless, this tank of course looks amazing, the video showcases it very well, and it really excites me to see. Leopard 2A6 in a year's time, Gaijin? Anybody? No? Just me? Okay. Maybe one day. But the prospect of receiving a T80 and or M1A1 in the coming few days has me super excited, as does of course the legendary Leopard 2A4. Anyway, that is going to have to be it for this video. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed, as there will be new content out on my channel every single day. Let me know your thoughts down below on the addition of the Leopard 2A4. Let's get a discussion going in the comments section. Come join me over on Twitch, Twitter, Discord and all the rest, links below, and as always I'll see you lads next video. Wait, what the kind of Frankenstein plane is that? Well lads, this is the Messerschmitt Bf109Z1 or Zwilling, a twin fuselage 109 just like the American twin Mustang or F82. This is a heavy fighter based on the Bf109 G6, the first variant, the Bf109 Z0, being based off the 109 F4. This plane has 430 mils. Oh my god, this thing is gonna Shrek. Designed to replace the Bf110, the Zwilling should succeed the K4 or Kurfürst in the tech tree.